Edward Hopper's world was New York, and he understood that city better than most. He understood something uncomfortable about modern life, that even in one of the most crowded and restless cities on Earth, it is still possible to feel completely alone. This painting was completed on January 21st, 1942, just weeks after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and America's entry into World War II. The war may not have been Hopper's direct subject, but the mood of the moment matters. Fear hung in the air. New York prepared for possible air raids. Blackout drills were introduced, lights were dimmed, and streets emptied earlier than usual. At night, the city became strangely quiet. Hopper's New York was dark, tense, and hushed. For decades, Hopper took the elevated L train to work, watching the city pass by through windows. By his 40s, he was still considered a failure. He couldn't sell his paintings. Critics ignored him. While other artists found recognition, Hopper survived by working as a magazine illustrator, a job he deeply disliked but relied on for income. He later admitted that illustration never interested him. It was simply a way to make money. Even when he was broke, Hopper protected his painting time. He limited illustration work to 3 days a week. The rest of the time he painted, quietly, stubbornly, convinced of his own ability, even when no one else seemed to care. He spent his entire adult life in New York City, much of it in a small walk-up apartment in Greenwich Village. Eventually, his wife Josephine, known as Jo, moved in. Their marriage was not a happy one. It was volatile, deeply codependent, and often marked by long silences. They argued constantly, sometimes not speaking to each other for days at a time. That emotional distance appears again and again in Hopper's work. Couples who share the same space, but seem to exist in entirely separate worlds. Then, in 1924, everything changed. At the age of 42, Hopper had his first sellout exhibition. He immediately gave up illustration and committed himself fully to painting. That same year, he married Jo. For Hopper, success and marriage arrived together, late, suddenly, and with consequences that would echo through the rest of his life and work. They married in their 40s and stayed together for 43 years. Before the marriage, Josephine Jo Nivison was already a working artist, the one who opened the doors for Hopper. She introduced him to curators at the Brooklyn Museum. When the museum bought one of his paintings, his career finally took off. Jo's practical social work made his breakthrough possible, even though Hopper rarely acknowledged her role. Their partnership was intense and unstable. It was at once dependent and corrosive, frequent fights, cutting words, periods of silence, and a jealousy that shaped their daily life. Jo insisted she be his only model. She appears, in different guises and ages, in nearly every female figure he painted, even in works like Girly Show when she was 60. The fraught chemistry of their marriage is visible on canvas. Couples who sit together but do not touch, who share rooms but not conversation, whose relationships feel unresolved and ambiguous. Both love the theatre and the cinema, and that taste shows in Hopper's staging. Nighthawks reads like a scene lit for an empty stage, theatrical lighting, sharp cropping, and angles that feel cinematic. Hopper obsessed over preparation. Finding a subject terrified him. Choosing it launched months of research, measured sketches, and painstaking studies of posture and space. 19 sketches for Nighthawks survive, hints of many more, and Jo's notes record who posed for whom. She posed for the woman, Hopper posed for the men. His years as a magazine illustrator, which he disparaged, had nonetheless sharpened his sense of narrative economy. He planned this painting like a director storyboarding a scene: props, costumes, the position of hands, the gap between two bodies, every detail recorded, then refined until the final composition spoke the silence he wanted it to hold. He worked the diner like an architect, measuring the angle of the big plate glass window, placing it on the corner so the building's strong diagonal lines cut across the canvas and point beyond the frame. Those diagonals do two things at once. They suggest a larger city outside the painting, and they funnel our sight back toward the four figures inside. Whether you start at the left or the right, the perspective drags you inexorably to that glowing interior. Color does the same job. Outside the diner, Muted reds and deep greens sit under a low, empty sky. Inside, a hard yellow light floods the room. The contrast makes the interior feel like an island, bright, unnatural, and intensely private. There's almost no life on the street. A lonely cash register in a shuttered shop, a faded poster above the diner, empty storefronts that close down the scene. The building feels shut, the city hushed. The window functions as a barrier and a stage. It keeps us at a distance and makes us voyeurs, looking in at people who seem preserved, almost specimen-like, under artificial light. Hopper returned to this motif again and again. Angles, glass, the slanted viewpoint, because he was obsessed with the act of looking and being looked at. He once called himself still an impressionist, and the echoes of artists like Gustav Caillebotte, whose work frequently frames figures behind panes of glass, are present in Hopper's perspectives and brushwork. Hopper was also alert to how light changes meaning. He had seen Van Gogh's cafe terrace at night and knew how artificial light could rewrite a scene. But where Van Gogh's cafe hums with warmth, Hopper's neon glow is colder, almost laboratory-like, modern, eerie, and slightly menacing. Night in Hopper's hands became a time of anxiety. There is no welcoming door for us to enter. The visible entrance likely leads to a kitchen. We can only stare through glass at people who do not speak to each other, and in that silence the painting asks us to complete the story it will not give us. The couple sit close to one another, yet feel psychologically miles apart. Are they even a couple at all? At first glance, it looks as though their hands might be touching, but they aren't. Her coffee is still steaming, while his has gone cold, suggesting he has been waiting, not just for a drink, but for her. The title Nighthawks came from Joe, who described the man's sharp profile as hawk-like. He holds an unlit cigarette, a small but telling detail. In Hopper's earlier sketch, that cigarette was in the woman's hand, a quiet shift that subtly changes the emotional balance of the scene. The man with his back to us is even more isolated. His presence sharpens the distance between the couple rather than easing it. Look closely and you see he grips a glass in his right hand, while a folded newspaper lies under his left arm, its front page almost certainly filled with war news. The glass feels oddly unclaimed. It doesn't seem meant for anyone in particular. It might even be for us. The waitress, like the others, avoids eye contact. She does not speak, does not engage. She simply exists within the space. The man with his back turned stares out toward the dark street, absorbed in his own interior world. No one in this diner connects. After Nighthawks was painted, people spent years trying to locate the real diner. Hopper dropped vague hints in interviews, and art lovers walked New York streets searching for the exact corner. They never found it. The reason is simple. The diner was never real. It never existed anywhere in the city. It existed only in Hopper's imagination. Hopper admired Ernest Hemingway's short story The Killers, published in 1927, in which two men enter a diner not to eat, but to wait, calmly and ominously, for their next victim. Nothing happens, and yet tension fills every moment. That story is often cited as an influence on Nighthawks. Years later, the 1946 film adaptation of The Killers would, in turn, draw heavily from Hopper's visual language. Painting influenced cinema, and cinema fed back into painting. Hopper loved movies and often went alone, late at night, searching for ideas. Film noir, with its sharp shadows, urban settings, and emotionally estranged characters, felt like a moving version of his own inner world. He even suggested that his work may have been shaped by German expressionist films he saw while living in Paris. Directors studied his paintings closely. During the production of Force of Evil, the director famously took his cinematographer to a Hopper exhibition and told him he wanted the film to look like those paintings. In terms of shaping how modern stories of isolation are told on screen, Hopper's influence is difficult to overstate. Few artists have left such a deep imprint on how cinema visualizes loneliness, tension, and the quiet spaces between people. Filmmakers picked up Hopper's language, his sharp contrasts, anonymous city interiors, tight cropping, and off-center framing, and made it their own. What they borrowed most, though, were his people, figures frozen in expectation, waiting for stories that never quite arrive. Nighthawks became shorthand on screen for emotional stasis, the diner as a set piece for loneliness and quiet dysfunction. But the painting is more than a cinematic mood piece. In a single, carefully arranged frame, it proposes a story that extends far beyond the canvas. That concentrated ambiguity is its power. When it debuted, the work was an immediate success. The Art Institute of Chicago bought it, and it remains there today. Hopper himself was as complicated as his images. Tall and introverted, already 6 feet by age 12, he carried a persistent sense of being apart. He was intellectually driven, often tormented by the search for subject and meaning. He worked slowly and deliberately, producing only a handful of paintings each year. Each canvas was the result of months of preparation. Marriage did not erase his solitude. Living with Joe ended some of his external loneliness, but introduced new forms of tension. Proximity didn't equal intimacy. Hopper's canvases repeatedly returned to that condition. People physically close, emotionally distant. He didn't romanticize the feeling, he documented it. And in doing so, he made a strange consolation possible. By holding this specific private loneliness up to the light, his paintings remind viewers that such isolation is not rare or shameful. It is part of modern life, and in recognizing it, we find we are less alone than we thought.